Dr. Cinema. I analyze and diagnose movies and explain them to you. Sorry, since this is the 1 year anniversary, decided to do some celebration consumption. Too much, too short of a span. So, I decided to do something slightly special. I was originally going to do one of a select few kind of videos based on some movies, but couple reasons why I didn't choose any of them. One, been busy with college homework, didn't get the time to actually go through the movies that I wanted to go check out. Second reason, the movie I am going to talk about does have a connection to one of my favorite movies. Now, earlier this week, I released a video ranking the 9 Hellraiser films. And I don't know if I said in that video, but my favorite horror movie of all time is actually the first Hellraiser movie. Love it. I love it. Now, the second film, I can actually make the argument is just as good. Third one, still a little unsure about how I feel about it. Fourth one, I can understand the supporters, but part of it is in space. Horror movies, when they're in space, there are so few that are good. Granted, the exceptions include Alien, but still, you probably understand what I mean. The rest of the straight to DVD videos are pretty bad, especially the 2011 one, the first time Doug Bradley is not Pinhead. However, we now have the 10th installment, Hellraiser-Judgment. Hold on a second. Yep, Hellraiser-Judgment. Now, Doug Bradley still does not return to the role of Pinhead, but he is not the guy who played Pinhead in Revelations. So good news there. I know I have trouble remembering stuff from movies, but I do have notes for this one. Quachi, where are my notes? What? Where? Oh, thanks. So I got some notes. The play-by-play review of Hellraiser-Judgment, the newest installment that gave me my favorite horror movie of all time. So, will this continue the trend of bad installments, or will this give the Hellraiser franchise hope for redemption? Let's find out. So it starts off with Pinhead, another servant of hell known as the Auditor, talking about how people no longer seek out the puzzle box or the Lament's configuration that summons the Cenobites, mainly due to the internet and that kind of stuff. The conversation is, I'm a little unsure about the exact words used in the conversation, but that actually gets by pretty quickly, because for the first 12 minutes of this film are actually really good. A guy known as Watkins gets a letter written in blood telling him to meet at this house, where he is then strapped to a chair and is now face to face with a man known as the Auditor. Now, the Auditor, this is made explicitly clear later in the film, but I'm just going to say it right now. The Auditor is a servant of hell, but he is not a Cenobite like Pinhead or Chatterer. He's part of a different faction of hell. The reason why I know this is that even though I don't read the comics, there is an expanded universe in the comics and such, further fleshing out the universe of Hellraiser. So that's how I know that. So the Auditor uses a typewriter that's attached to the blood vessels in Watkins, writes out all of his sins. Then a guy who actually looks very human, like he actually looks like a regular human, he eats the pages of sins, then he throws it up into a tube that takes it down to the jury, which is 3 naked women with disfigured faces. I don't know why they look that way, but I will say that the Auditor's look is actually very cool to look at. So then the Auditor tells Watkins he's guilty, and he takes him to be clean, which is basically being licked and such by a different set of group of women. Then comes in the butcher, who has the surgeon on his back, and he begins cutting. Watkins peels off his skins, and it is death for him. And that's the first 12 minutes in the opening credits roll. The first 12 minutes will actually satisfy almost every Hellraiser fan. Sorry. It's great. It really is. But of course, now we have to get to the human part of the film, where we are starts focus on two detectives, Sean and David, both brothers, and they come to the crime scene of a woman who's been killed by a serial killer known as the Preceptor. And the woman is dead on the carpet, and on the carpet someone wrote, "I am a jealous God." And the reason for that is because the Preceptor kills people based on the Ten Commandments. In this case, this woman worshipped her dog more than anything else, so he sewed the dog into the woman's womb, and the dog's still alive. That's messed up. Granted, horror movies have become so typical when it comes to human death that you're going to have to do something really big in order to get people's attention. But involving a dog, come on, people love dogs. Leave them out of this. However, this does bring in a new detective named Christine, who helps the two brothers out while they're investigating the case. And then the next scene that pops up is where they get called into a playground where there's a bunch of jars of blood and some severed hands. And apparently, according to a clue at the scene, this means that these people were thieves. It's really weird. Oh, and I should probably mention, for some reason, the older brother, Sean, tells David he should read more. Especially, and he brings up the book, The Tale of Two Cities, that he should read it. Odd. Oh, and Sean, by the way, is really into the Bible as well. So yeah, there's that. So, and while the detectives are trying to figure out what to do next, we get a shot of Pinhead sitting in a chair. Yeah, sitting in a chair. The man in the chair. But here's the interesting thing. In the first 12 minutes, we actually do get a shot of Pinhead sitting in a chair, assumingly in the house that the auditor is using. But the scene that pops up during the police investigation looks almost exactly the same as the one in the first 12 minutes. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is exactly the same. I'm not sure if that's being resourceful or just being lazy. Who cares? So in this investigation, they think Watkins might be a possible suspect for the Preceptor. And so Sean by himself decides to go check out this house where the letter that's found in his apartment told him to go to, and he shows up at the auditor. Now, the auditor and Sean talking to each other is actually pretty interesting. They seem to, it's kind of hard to explain. It's just one of those things you just have to watch for yourself. I mean, Sean doesn't really ask where is he or what's going on. He's taking into account everything that's around him and actually making very accurate assumptions about what's about to happen. In fact, I think this chummies up the auditor enough where when Sean asks what's all the puzzle boxes above the fireplace, he actually tells them that they're, doesn't actually say Lament's configurations, but were used as a way for helping people be judged and seek redemption and such. It's very, very interesting conversation between the two. But of course, during the scene, it's made pretty clear that Sean is the preceptor without outright saying that he is. I mean, yeah, the twist of the movie isn't really a twist, but you could probably see it coming. And we also learned that he was a war veteran as well, so that's probably why he went became obsessed with the Bible and obsessed with people being people in the modern age, I suppose. It's kind of standard. So, writes up the sins, the assessor comes in, but as he's eating the sins, he just throws up this black sludge that gets down to the tube, which seems to really actually start taking physically harming the assessor and the jury. And this summons in bright white light a woman. Now she does get a name, but I have no idea how to pronounce it. I'm just going to call her Angel Lady. Yes, even though it isn't made explicitly clear the first time she shows up, she is an angel. Yeah, she shows up. The auditor meets with her and she says to let him go. He says he can't. The process is being done right now for cleaning and such, but she says to release him. So the auditor then goes actually to meet Pinhead. Now, adding angels to Hellraiser. I am a little familiar with the comic edition of the Hellraiser universe, but I don't think angels or God ever really came up, at least not in like actual physical form like this. This is expanding the mythology. And if I'm being kind of honest, this is something that hasn't been done since Hellraiser 4 Bloodline. Huh. Well, anyway, the auditor goes into a separate room of the house where apparently all the Cenobites are just hanging out. In fact, Chatter kind of like steps up to the auditor, kind of intimidating him. But Pinhead pretty much calls Chatter back like an obedient dog. Come on, Pinhead. Chatter is as much as a favorite of hell as you are. Don't treat him like a dog. But then Auditor tells Pinhead that the angel lady come down. She says to let the boy go. The man go, Sean. So Pinhead and the Auditor go to where Sean is supposed to be, but they find out that he actually escaped. Pinhead, though, is like, he'll be back. Don't worry. Now, Pinhead is played by a new guy. Can't quite remember the guy's name, but he's not the guy from Revelations. So, obviously, that's already a win in my book. But in an interview, the new guy said that Pinhead is bored. I mean, the Auditor and his faction, which includes the assessor, the jury, the butcher, the surgeon, they're not Cenobites, but they seem to be sort of like the new ones in charge of the whole gathering souls process. I mean, he's the Hell Priest, and he seems to be tired of immortality, just tired of everything. Like, nothing really brings him much feeling anymore. Now, normally, this is kind of like a bad thing to say in an interview about a new movie. But I think the execution is actually kind of interesting. Anyway, so Sean escapes with a Lament configuration, and when he's asleep, he gets this nightmare? I want to say nightmare, but it's a lot more than that because two Cenobite twins apparently come, put a mask on his face, Chatter pours some hot oil or something on his face, but apparently none of that actually happened. So then Sean just goes out into the streets drinking, and he has a similar experience with a skinless Watkins, which is very weird. But anyway, it's the next day, and Christine admits to the younger brother, Detective David, that she was called in just to help with the case, but also to figure out how well Sean is doing and to see if there's something up with him. But David gets called in by Sean, who helps him get showered and get ready to go into work because he's been drinking. And he makes a quote about only God can judge me before heading off into the shower. This makes David think a little bit. He sees he has a copy of Tale of Two Cities, flips to the first page, sees a couple of highlighted sections that seem kinda darkish, and I guess this is where David sort of puts two to two together that perhaps Sean is the serial killer. I mean, oh no! I mean, come on, the twist is expected, guys. Come on. Do better. Well, anyway, then Christine and Sean go to a warehouse where it's believed that the preceptor, aka Sean, might be hiding something. Bunch of photographs and everything. Of course, in the warehouse where then Sean knocks out Christine. David later comes by, and of course, this is made explicitly clear. Sean is the preceptor. And in addition to having Christine knocked unconscious and having his own brother David here, he also got his wife here. Yeah, Sean is married, has a wife, and it reveals that he knows that they have been having an affair with each other behind his back. And so he plans to kill them in order to complete his serial killing method ritual stuff. However, during his big, evil, bad guy monologue, he says, I loathe the modern world. What? Okay, Sean, I know you're the older brother, but how old are you? 30s, early, mid, maybe late 30s? You're not that old. This is your movie. If you're going to have a guy that's apparently so hateful of the modern world, at the very least, actually make him look like he's old enough to actually have those kinds of feelings. I mean, like I said, the guy's mid-30s. Are you serious right now? Well, anyway, he makes him open the Lament's configuration, and this summons Pinhead and the Auditor. And when Pinhead enters, it's great. He's like, I knew you would come back. Evil seeks evil. I'm not gonna lie. This guy, even though he's not Doug Bradley, he is the next best thing. I am loving this guy. And so Sean tries to make a deal by giving David and his wife in exchange for his soul. But Pinhead's like, no deals. They will be punished, but we'll have you too. Or something like that. And I think this is sort of like a subtle nod towards the first two Hellraiser films where Kirsty Cotton makes a deal of giving them back Frank in exchange for letting her go. And I guess this is sort of like a common thing that's been used in a couple other Hellraiser films. But this is a nice subtle nod. Like, Pinhead, this actually fits with the description that Pinhead is supposedly bored. And he's like, no deals, no more. We're doing this. Of course, this again summons Angel Lady. Again, her name, I can't pronounce it, just call her Angel Lady. Tells him to let Sean go. Oh, by the way, David and the wife both get dragged off into hell at this point. Bye. And of course, Angel Lady says that Sean is doing sin that's ordained by heaven. By spreading fear, he is gathering followers and believers in heaven. And that his time will come, just not yet. So Pinhead's like, fine. But of course, Sean tries to get the upper hand by shooting at Pinhead and Angel Lady and the Auditor. I'm just like, dude, really? You're shooting gunshots? Really? But he gets sent back to the warehouse, where of course Christine wakes up and shoots Sean dead. And if you ask me, it's a little bit overkill. But yeah, obviously, yeah, that's probably what I expected. And back to the hell part with Pinhead, Angel Lady, and the Auditor. Angel Lady is kind of pretty mad, saying that he knew that would happen. Pinhead's like, you know nothing of human nature, which is a sort of like a nice callback to when Pinhead said he'll be back when Sean escaped the house. And Angel Lady's like, there's going to be hell to pay and that you will suffer. And she's saying this as Pinhead uses chains to grab both her arms and hold her out like this. And Pinhead's just like, suffer me. And honestly, if I was Pinhead, I'd be like, bitch, I'm the motherfucking hell priest. And so he starts using his own pins from his head, starts sticking them in the head of Angel Lady. And he does a few of that, and then we get to look at her a little bit, and Pinhead is like, are you the way? Which, again, is the sort of like a subtle callback to the third Hellraiser film, where he says, I am the way. And it's also a little bit mocking of the Angel Lady, since, you know, really religious people like, Jesus is the way and such. And then Pinhead gets several chains to like get into her face, starts pulling her back, and she says, Jesus wept, which is what Frank said in the first Hellraiser film. Again, I love the callback to that. And the chains rip her apart. And the Auditor is kind of scared at this point, because he's like, what if they can punish us? And Pinhead's like, I fear nothing. But the Auditor brings up a good point that they did banish Adam and Eve from the garden, so what if they can banish them? And that's exactly what happens. Apparently we don't see God, but apparently God uses bright light, and Pinhead is no longer Pinhead, but back in his human form, on the streets. He actually looks miserable, and end credits. Usually this is where the movie ends. But there's a post-credit scene. In Hanover, Germany, a couple of missionaries come to a house to like, are you aware of the good word of Jesus? Then their smiles disappear and they just end up walking into the house. Then we see the Auditor going, 2. It's not even a Tuesday. And the process continues. And that is Hellraiser-Judgment, the 10th installment of the Hellraiser franchise. The franchise that gave me my favorite horror movie ever, the original Hellraiser. And also, I guess, Hellbound Hellraiser 2 by an extent. So, how is it? Well, let's start with the stuff that's probably the weaker parts of the film. The whole storyline of the police detectives, with them revealing that police detective is actually a serial killer they've been hunting. It's standard. I wouldn't necessarily say it's bad, because I have seen horror movies that have used this kind of plot line or something similar to it, and they've butchered it. So I can't really say it's bad, but it's predictable. You know what to expect, and while a couple of subtle hints throughout this storyline might be a little fun or interesting to see, it's not unexpected. However, having said that, the Hellraiser stuff is actually very fun to watch. I mean, most of the straight to DVD sequels, like Hellraiser 5 to Hellworld, are most likely films that started off as like their own thing, but then were added Hellraiser elements to them in order for the studio to keep the rights. But no, this script for Hellraiser-Judgment was always meant to be a Hellraiser script, and it definitely shows in a positive way. And finally, the new Pinhead. I'm sorry, I already forgot his name. But like I said, he may not be Doug Bradley, but he is the next best thing. I actually really love him. And it does leave its doors up to a sequel, which I'm actually would be very interested in seeing. Now, I know a lot of people will probably be taken aback by the fact that there's very little Cenobites and still very little Hellraiser stuff in the film, even though it was always meant to be a Hellraiser film. But let me remind you that the original Hellraiser film never really showed the Cenobites for that long. In fact, I think they had like at most 10 minutes of screen time. It's how you blend it in with the other stuff in the story. So, like I said, even though the human detective storyline is standard, the Hellraiser stuff is actually very creative, and it expands the mythology, which I love. I mean, any film that expands the mythology in a good way, such as Hellraiser-Judgment, gets a good score in my book. I mean, the two most recent Chucky movies, Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, took everyone by surprise by how well the special effects were, how entertaining a lot of it was, but also that it knew how to organically expand the mythology. And that's something Hellraiser-Judgment does. It expands the mythology in an organic way. So, where does this rank in my ranking of the Hellraiser films? Well, obviously, the original Hellraiser film is at number 1, and Hellbound is at number 2. I will say Hellraiser-Judgment beats Bloodline, which was ranked at number 4. As for Hell on Earth, okay, as of right now, I'm just going to say that Hellraiser-Judgment and Hell on Earth are currently tied for number 3 as of right now in my ranking. Although I probably would not be surprised if I end up making Hellraiser-Judgment my third favorite film of the franchise. Now, I know this might be a lot different from what a lot of other people have been saying, but that's how much I really appreciate and admire what's actually done in the film. The director of this film, who also plays the auditor, he actually cares. And that's what I really like. Hey, Guachi! Yeah, Guachi and I watch Hellraiser-Judgment. You like it? Oh, fuck you. I'm just kidding. He actually did tell me that he actually really liked the film. He just wanted me to say fuck you in the video. Well, anyway, so that's my review of Hellraiser-Judgment. I am really pleasantly surprised by this film, and I really do appreciate it. So that's my 1-year anniversary big video. I know this isn't the most high-end, high-produced YouTube channels, but please become subscribers. Or if you already are a subscriber, tell other people. This is still a fun YouTube channel. I do try my best to bring something new to the table, and I hope you can agree with me but I do bring something new to the table, even if you don't agree with what I have to say. So, I guess that's really all that I can really say. So, like, comment down below, subscribe, tell other people by sharing, and I am Dr. Cinema. I hope to stick around for at least another year, if not more.